Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review of another Roja. I'm on a little bit of a Roja kick lately, probably more to come, but I've had these fragrances for years. I'm just kind of getting around to doing the review. This particular one is discontinued, and it has been for a long time now. I think it's been discontinued for 2 or 3 years at least. It came out in 2017, and they almost instantly nixed it. I don't know why. Originally, 3 years ago, they put it in the Heritage collection, and then they just completely did away with it. But this is called Roja's Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this is from the Gulf collection, and you can see I put a pretty damn good dent in this as well. This is one of their 7.5 mil Discovery atomizers, which they have since changed. The cap is a little bit different on the new Discovery atomizers. The old ones used to have his signature on there, and they stopped that little detail. And then some of the older ones had a sticker on there, and they stopped that. So there's different versions of the Discovery atomizers floating around. But I've given this a fair amount of wear. I've probably worn this, 5, maybe 6 times now to put that sort of a dent in it. And so let me read you the little blurb on Roja Parfums Gulf Collection, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and then we'll sort of talk a little bit about it. I do think that this is a good perfume. I know there's some people out there that really dislike this fragrance, and some people I actually really respect really dislike this fragrance, but I'm not in that camp. I think it's a good fragrance. Obviously, it's very overpriced. Do not pay like $1,000 for this now because it's discontinued. It's not worth that at all. But here's the blurb from the Roja house, which as usual, their blurbs kind of piss me off sometimes because I don't think the blurb is true to the fragrance necessarily, but I mean, he's a fantastic marketer. Say what you want about Roja. He is a fantastic marketer, and some of his fragrances, when you smell, you're really in for a treat. They're fragrances that last a long time. They tell a story. There's a lot of different notes, and sometimes you really almost feel like you're being sold a bill of goods by a con man. You know what I mean? Like, some of his fragrances are some of the most amazing things I've ever smelled, and other times when you look at the stuff he puts out, it's like, damn, I can't believe people fall for that and pay that kind of money. Let's talk about this particular one. So this is dedicated to the Taif rose, is the blurb from the brand when this came out. So it says, a Jubilee celebration on Taif, the summer capital of Saudi Arabia, and the legendary rose that blooms within its walls. Their ancient fragrance lingers in the memories of visitors for a long time, even when they have left. This fragrance celebrates the venerable rose of this kingdom. Okay, so that little blurb right there sums up some of Roja's marketing tactics, because what's interesting is whenever you actually go look at pictures, and I'll put it up on the thumbnail, so whenever you click on the video, you'll see, the bottle, which is a beautiful bottle. It basically looks like this right here. This is the Sultanate of Oman. Basically looks like this, but with Saudi's buildings here. Each one gets its own sort of buildings from the city. It's a beautiful bottle. The older ones used to look like this, where you can kind of see more of the Arabic style flag colors, the green, red, and white. And it had just the standard Roja plate on it. So this is what the older Kingdom bottles look like, Gulf Collection bottles, and then the newer ones with the, dedicated plates to the country itself. So let's talk a little bit about the Taif rose, because the Taif rose is one of my favorite roses in all of perfumery. I actually have some actual Taif oil that's very rare and expensive that Russian Adam sent to me, and I have some drops of what I would consider the absolute best Taif rose fragrance I've ever smelled. And it's probably, if you said, Ramsey, you get one fragrance that you don't have in your collection, you can pick one. Go ahead, and it'll just appear here. It would be this. This is Malik Al Taif by Areej Dore, the greatest Taif rose fragrance as far as I'm concerned. Just fuck, man. It is so spot on and perfect. And God, I mean, just one of the most beautiful things I've ever smelled in my life, to be quite honest with you. Probably my favorite rose fragrance, not just that I don't have in my collection, but that I've ever smelled. That's the way Taif rose should make you feel. And when you look at the note listing of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I'll just read it to you. It's aldehydes, artemisia, lime, and mandarin orange in the top, with apple, blackcurrant, raspberry, banana, strawberry, chamomile, geranium, jasmine from Grass, May rose, plum, and violet in the heart, fir balsam, oud, cotton candy, violet leaf clove, leather, musk, pink pepper, cedar wood, cinnamon, cacao, oak moss, patchouli, saffron, sandalwood, and vanilla in the base. So where's the Taif rose is my number one question. And how come no one has asked that question about this fragrance? It's 2023. How come I have to get up here and bitch for the first 5 minutes of a video for someone to ask that question is what I want to know. And maybe that's why they discontinued it, because the picture I'm going to post is the marketing picture from Roja Parfums from their website, where it used to show like big chunks of oud in the background and real Taif roses in the background. And you know, it's just like, he's a great marketer, okay? He's a fantastic marketer. But if you're gonna literally have a write-up that says that it is a Jubilee celebration of the Taif rose, damn it, there better be some Taif rose in here. And the fact that it's not listed as a note, now maybe he could say, well, but there is 0.001 drop of Taif. And I know Taif rose is very expensive, but I expect there to be some damn Taif rose in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And according to the note listing, not just from Parfumo, but from the brand itself, there's May rose and not Taif rose. So take that what you will. If you want to learn more about the Taif rose, go watch my video on Malik Al Taif by Areej Dore. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because I do enjoy this fragrance. As you can see, I've given it a fair amount of wearings. And so this is considered a fruity oriental fragrance, although to me, when I smell Roja's fragrances, just like if you watched my video yesterday on Fortnum and Mason, the perfume, you know that that's considered kind of oriental, but it has this chypre lean, it has this chypre leaning feel. I would say the same thing about Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This feels like a fruity chypre to me. Roja loves his chypres. This is a very complex fragrance. Many times, Oriental fragrances are not this complex. You get a lot more resins and stuff like that. And the resins do come out a little bit in the base. I think there's a labdanum note in here, which is not listed in the note listing. Maybe some cistus labdanum. But, and I know Roja loves that note. But for the most part, the way that I perceive this fragrance is when you first spray it, it's a little bit of a mystery to many people. But what I get in the beginning is oily aldehydes and this very resinous green touch, which is basically Artemisia. Artemisia is slightly bitter, slightly earthy, slightly herbal, and it's blended with this orange, okay? So this mandarin orange in particular. And mandarin orange adds a little bit of sweetness to it, a little bit of citrus feeling to it, but the mandarin orange is very, very prominent from the very beginning, and it's blended with the aldehydes in the top, okay? And basically what happens is it's a very complex blend in the beginning because a lot hits you at once, like many Roja fragrances. But what ends up happening is, you know, you get a lot of fruits that come to the forefront. And the other thing I should mention is, what in the world does banana and strawberry and apple and plum and black currant, what does that have to do with Saudi Arabia? What does cotton candy have to do with Saudi Arabia? I mean, I've never been to Saudi Arabia, but if somebody knows, please do tell me why, you know, this was chosen as the homage to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I would love to know. I'm not saying that that's not correct. I'm just saying I'm a little befuddled as to why he decided to do that. But what's interesting is I do get a lot of violet in the beginning. So there's almost like this purple violet in color, right? So just imagine this sort of very hazy, blurry Parma violet that's slightly powdery and candied. So like a candied violet accord is kind of what comes to the forefront in the opening notes. And as those opening notes with the aldehydes and the mandarin orange and that herbal artemisia begin to almost violently evaporate off of your skin, what ends up filling the gap, if you will, is this beautifully sort of cypriol, heavy smelling oud accord, okay? So I'm not saying there's not real oud in here, although I would be surprised if there was. I'm saying that it smells like cypriol and patchouli, fruit chuli, patchouli, whatever you want to call it, and cypriol. And it gives that very modern, westernized oud accord that you've smelled many, many times before, okay? And so this powdered candied violet blends with these fruity notes and this cypriol heavy oud note. To my nose, that's the oud note you're going to smell in many of his fragrances, okay? It's like a cypriol heavy oud note. If you watched my review of Taif oud, which he has which used to be Fortnum and Mason Taif Oud. Now it's just Taif Oud. And, you know, if you go watch my review on that, and you can kind of really get a better breakdown of the way that his oud note appears to my nose. But in all of his perfumes, that oud accord is kind of there, right? And it's that patchouli, cypriol, saffron-like blend, very Middle Eastern in style. But you know, it's funny because if you read some of the reviews on this, there are many people who say that the opening smells like fecal, animalic, Indian oud. It's so shitty I can hardly wear it. And I'm just going, what? I mean, I think it probably is where these people come from in their journey. Like if you're brand new to the fragrance game and you smell this, you might be like, oh my gosh, it's so oudy and animalic. But for me, I'm always like, you know, this is an easy beginner's oud. This is like a starter oud. It's an easy wear. It's an easy sort of, because it has all these fruits and, you know, especially a little bit of candy floss here, which we're going to talk about. So to my nose, I don't get this very animalic opening other people talk about, but that's just my opinion. There's a beautiful raspberry note that really kind of blends with this candied Parma violet I was talking about earlier. And the raspberry note is a very similar smell to the raspberry that you'll smell in Oh, the Exclusive Parfum. Oh, the Exclusive Parfum, which I think is also discontinued, if I'm not mistaken. But I do have a review of that on the channel as well. If you would like, go to my playlist, find Roja Parfums, and you can see all the reviews I've done for Roja. But along the way, basically, other fruits start to join this raspberry. The raspberry is sort of front and center, if you will, and it's a familiar raspberry, just like his ouds are familiar ouds. It's a familiar raspberry if you smelled some of his other work, especially in the Middle Eastern line or Oh, the Exclusive Parfum. And, you know, these other fruits start to sort of come in. This apple, this blackcurrant, this banana, strawberry, and plum, and they all sort of come along to you know, give off this sort of fruit jam, if you will, almost like a fruit conserve, right? And blending with that modern cypriol oud oil smell, to my nose anyways, which I've smelled many, many times, that jammy fruit conserve adds a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of, I don't want to say unoriginal, but it's a very prototypical Middle Eastern smell. He's just Roja'd it up, which I've said many, many times before. Many of his fragrances feel Roja'd up. They just feel like he's added a little extra something, a little luxurious blob smell here or there, but the skeleton of the fragrance is very familiar if you're a frag head, if you've smelled a lot of different things. And the fruits, interestingly enough, that fruity sweetness, which you might smell and go, oh man, this is going to be way too sweet for me or way too fruity for me, or I have to say, this is a very well-balanced fragrance. So I just imagine somebody like walking on like a tightrope with one of those, you know, batons in his hand, like balancing himself so he doesn't fall. And that's kind of how this composition feels to my nose, because the fruitiness, the sweetness, the candied fruits are almost offset by this very aldehydic green touch in the opening from the Artemisia, which lingers around a little bit. It's slightly bitter, slightly herbal, and, you know, it mixes with sort of the earthiness of the cypriol, and it's a nice sort of bridge into the mid. And then in the base, there's a note that comes along called violet leaf. And if you know violet leaf can sometimes have this airy feel about it, this ozonic, airy feel about it. And here, it almost feels like it just adds space between the notes, right? So it almost feels like, you know, you're standing at the top of Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia, or Kingdom's Tower, whatever they call it now, and you're just feeling like the breeze in your face. The biggest building on earth is Jeddah Tower, which is crazy when you think about how tall that damn thing is. It's like 252 floors or something, I read. Could you imagine going up to the 252nd floor and feeling the breeze on your face? But that's almost how it feels like, because there's this air between the notes, there's space between the notes, and that gives the fragrance a chance to kind of pause, and it gives you a chance to kind of appreciate things, and it also makes it feel less just like an ambery goo. You know how some synthetic ambers, like Grand Soir is a great example of that to me, just feels like a synthetic goo of amber. And I'll review Grand Soir and you know, completely rip it to shreds one of these days. But You know, the aldehydes and sort of the violet leaf just add space and air to the composition. And that brings us to the dreaded bubblegum accord. So they list it as candy floss or cotton candy, if you will. But basically, if you're familiar with the very famous fragrance from the 90s from the house of Thierry Mugler called Angel, which then spawned Angel Men or Amen, which apparently now they say it's discontinued, which if that's true, that is an absolute shame. And so, you know, Amen uses a very familiar ethyl maltol accord in here. And ethyl maltol was used as a flavoring agent in bubblegum. And that's why they say it has a bubblegum-like accord, right? And so it's funny because usually I hate sweet fragrances. Like if you know my taste, you know I'm an absolute hater of ultra sweet, modern fragrances that use a lot of ethyl maltol and try to outdo themselves. Things like Baccarat Rouge 540. No, absolutely not. That's not for me. But here, you know, the way that it's used in, Amen, and the way that it's used in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, that cotton candy floss, bubble gum sort of sweetness in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Remember, it's on the balance beam, right? So everything here is sort of balanced, and it's not too much. I can stand it. The dry down brings in a touch of leather, just a touch of leather, touch of musk, and a touch of this spice. Okay, and the spice is basically mostly clove and cinnamon. That's what it feels like. It feels like clove and cinnamon, but it's sort of blending with everything else that you begin to get into the dry down. And if you can imagine this candied cypriol oud type accord, sort of spinning itself into the base, right? So imagine the cotton candy being spun in one of those machines, right? Imagine the heart of this fragrance, which is like the fruity, you know, raspberry, blackcurrant, apple, banana, strawberry, plum, with florals. And just imagine it kind of being spun into the base. So you get a little bit of that textured oak moss, that herbal green textured oak moss. And sometimes when I wear it, the oak moss feels greener, or the dry down feels a little bit greener. Sometimes when I wear it, the woodiness kind of jumps forward a little bit more. And, you know, sometimes the fragrance feels pretty dry, like the woods in here feel dry. They don't really feel moist necessarily, but it's not an ultra dry concoction. It does feel like there's some moisture to the composition. It's just not in the woods. The woods in this fragrance feel very dry to my nose. Very dry, textured. There's also sandalwood that mixes with the oud in here, but it doesn't feel like a very high quality sandalwood note to my nose. It feels like they just built some synthetic sandalwood composition. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's my guess. And what ends up happening as the fragrance continues to dry is you get a little bit more of that labdanum that I said is not listed here, and you basically get this chocolatey vanilla, okay? So this chocolatey cacao vanilla like accord mixes into the dry down with the saffron, okay? And it just makes the fragrance feel like it has volume. It feels voluminous, if you will. And remember, the cotton candy sort of kind of spinning itself around and getting bigger and bigger on the stick, right? That's sort of what the fragrance feels like. It feels like there's some depth in here, but there's also space. Like if you just squash the cotton candy, it would all just come right between your hands, right? And so that's a little bit of the dry down. As it continues to dry down, though, more and more of sort of the smoke and resins begin to come to your nose. So you're going to notice like it almost feels like the oud or the woods in here turn smokier, if you will. There's a little bit of that smoke moss smell, but in the Middle Eastern style. So remember that fruity oud, saffron, rose, incense is all sort of in the background. Roja up, right? So he Roja'd everything up. So it has that very high class feel. It has that, you know, you're a sheikh walking to Kingdom Tower because you work on the 252nd floor and everybody salutes as you walk by, right? That's sort of the feeling of this perfume. But I like how he mixed in some of the herbal green bitterness of the Artemisia, not just the cotton candy sweetness, not just the fruits, not just the oud, but all in all, unfortunately, the shortcomings of this perfume are that how can you say you're going to represent Taif oud and then put out something like this, okay? So I think Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a good fragrance, but when you have a write-up that says you're going to, you know, you're going to represent Taif Oud, the legendary Taif Oud, or what did they say? A Jubilee celebration of Taif Oud. Excuse me, a Jubilee. And then you put out something like this. It's like, okay, I'm not really 100% sure what to make of that. That's number one. And then number two, it really does start to dry down, not to something boring, but something traditional. You know, like if you took the average frag head and said, build a Middle Eastern style fragrance, this would probably not be a million miles away from what you would expect. You know what I mean? It's just Roja'd up. It's made for, it has that luxury blob smell, which I have to give credit for that term to the Scented Devil. That's his term. I just really loved it, so I kind of took it. But I have to give him credit for that one because he came up with the luxury blob smell. And there's really nothing better you can say about some of these luxury fragrances other than they have the luxury blob smell. I mean, they do. You smell them everywhere now. And this has that, but in the Middle Eastern style, if that makes sense. So, you know, it's kind of a vision of what most frag heads would imagine. Imagine like a rose, oud, saffron, which is so common nowadays, done by Roja with a ton of fruits and a little bit of a candy floss accord and this chocolatey vanilla, because it has a little bit of cacao and vanilla into the dry down. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you could probably imagine what this smells like without ever smelling it. And the part that I think throws most people off is that opening. That mandarin orange aldehydic opening with a little bit of herbal green artemisia. That's the part that kind of throws people off because most of the Middle Eastern fragrances would not have an opening like that. It's almost like he took a Middle Eastern fragrance and just stapled that opening on top. And, you know, everyone's like, what the hell is this? And then he wrote a dedication to the Taif rose and everyone went, what? You need to discontinue this, Roja. And he's like, yeah, we should probably discontinue this. So, like even my sample here, you can see it says the Heritage Collection. So this is when you could still get it after they technically discontinued it and put it in the Heritage Collection. Why would you discontinue something and then have it in the Heritage Collection where you could still buy it? Are you just buying old stock? Were they still producing it? Because if they're still producing it, it's not discontinued. So anyways, enough mental gymnastics for today. I hope you guys liked the review. Appreciate everyone's support. I'm going to try to do another review tonight for you guys. Maybe a live stream. We'll see how I feel. But let me know what you think of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia if you've had a chance to smell it. Love to hear your thoughts. More Roja reviews to come, so stay tuned. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.